Alright everyone, today is Combat 101 for the DM, and it's basically the same video as yesterday, but that doesn't matter because yesterday was an introduction and I missed a few things there. So, combat is pretty important to the game. It's every new DM is going to need it. It's the first tool you're going to have. It's the foundation of the game. It's probably the first thing you're going to do in your first session of your first campaign ever, is combat, unless it's the tavern meeting, of course. But combat is it's very important and it's early on. So you ask yourself, how do I run combat? Well, it's pretty easy. Step one is prep, and that's usually the first step here is prepping. So you ask yourself, how do I prep? You just need to know what your players are going to face. As an early DM, all you need to know is what your players are going to face. So let's take goblins and wolves for example. All right, so how do I prep for goblins and wolves? It's simply all you need is their stat block, right? But if we take a look at that from the Monster Manual and the basic rules, that's a lot. That's a lot of information. That's way more than we need. All we need is what I call the core four. All right, their armor class, their hit points, their attack bonus, and their average damage. And we only need those four because for a lot of the smaller monsters, the players are going to be less experienced. They're going to be doing less checks. And everything isn't going to be relevant. You're not going to need all their skills. You need to know all their proficiencies, their languages, their equipment. You're not going to know their core ability scores. All you're really going to need is those four numbers to run a combat, right? If it's an NPC, maybe you'll want a little bit more than that. Maybe you'll want a little bit different things than that. But for a basic monster and basic combat, all you really need is those four numbers. And so, all right, well, now you've prepped, right? So you ask yourself, what do I do next? What you do next is you got to learn how combat works. So combat is first off, it's round based in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It's at the beginning of combat there's a round, and every player and NPC and monster has a turn within that round. So when you start combat, you'll start by rolling initiative, which is pretty simple. You just roll a d20 and you add your dexterity modifier. And if you're a bard, or if you're a fighter or barbarian, or if you're an artificer with their intelligence bonus, or a swashbuckler rogue, basically you roll a d20 and you add your dexterity. If you have some other modifier from some other ability, you'll add that. But usually it's just the d20 plus dex. So that's initiative, right? So whoever gets the highest number goes first in the round, right? So let's say we have a fighter and a goblin, and the goblin beats the fighter in initiative, so the goblin goes first, right? Well, now what can the goblin do? The goblin can do 5 things, right? Action, reaction, bonus action, free interaction, and movement. So what does all that mean? Well, an action is almost anything in combat. Swinging a sword, casting a spell, trying to grab someone, running away safely, running away fast, almost anything really. But it's anything that says it's an action, right? You can help your ally, you can hinder your enemy, anything along those lines. And DMs, here's a pro tip, all right? Encourage your players' engagement and creativity by allowing creative tactics to work, right? Because if you just shut them down every time they try and come up with something that's not in the official rules, they're not going to really want to be as creative, right? There's not going to be any kind of motivation to be creative. So if you want them to be more engaged, you've got to allow them to think and be creative, and so you've got to allow their tactics to have a chance to succeed. And honestly, I would almost err on the side of just fudging rolls initially to kind of get the ball rolling on that process, to make sure they know you're not going to punish them for being creative. To kind of let them know that there's rewards for being creative, because if you want more of something, you reward it, and if you want less, you punish it, right? So why would you punish creative players when you could reward them and get more creative plays? So that's a pro tip for you. So that's an action. A bonus action or reaction, that's anything that says bonus action or reaction. And like an action, it can be improvised as well. But an example of a bonus action could be making an offhand attack or taking a potion. I tell you, that's a homebrew rule, but a lot of people agree that taking a potion should be a bonus action. If you have some unarmed strikes as a bonus action, you could use those. If you want to command a summon, that's a bonus action. So those are all examples of bonus actions. It's just something that's kind of minor in the combat that can be done. Now, as far as a reaction goes, it's anything that says reaction. It's just like a bonus action. So anything that's a reaction is something like making an attack of opportunity, casting shield, casting counterspell, using a parry from defensive duelist. Anything along those lines is a reaction. Now, a reaction usually happens outside of your turn, but still within the round. Okay. So again, you get each of those per round, most of them can only be used in the turn, but the reaction especially can be used outside of the turn. Okay? Now, an example of it being used inside the turn is if you run away from someone and they get an attack of opportunity, and you cast Shield in response or something along those lines. That's an example of a reaction within the turn. But again, it's one reaction per round, not turn. So you can't double up. You can't get one on your turn and during the round. Okay, so too simple. Too simple. Okay, so free interaction. That's something like drawing an item, stowing an item, using something, anything along those lines is free interaction. It's also talking. They can be kind of liberal with free interaction as long as it's up to DM discretion. Movement is the final thing, and movement is so simple. It's literally just moving around the battlefield. All right, that's all movement is. It's too easy. It's too easy. You move in sets of 5 feet. So if someone has a movement speed of 30, they can move through 6 squares. If they have a movement speed of 25, they can move through 5 squares. All right, it's easy. Now here's something. It's a homebrew rule, but a lot of people do it. You should give your players a free check during combat to do something like, if they're fighting a monster and they're not sure what it is, maybe they can do a nature check to try and discern what it is or some of the weaknesses, right? Or if you have like a barbarian who wants to flip a table, maybe let him try for that, and maybe make it part of his free check. Maybe if he gets a lot out of it, maybe make it his action or his bonus action or something, right? Just you can come up with whatever you want, but it's good to give them a free check every round because that increases their engagement with the combat and with the world. You can use this even as a little bit of a lore dump at times, which is great because if they're asking to make the check, then they are engaged. But if you're giving a whole big monologue on one stone in the middle of the woods, they're probably not going to be as engaged. So those are the actions in combat. All right, we know how to roll initiative now. I guess I should go over spellcasting and attack rolls and saving throws, okay? So first of all checks, attack rolls, and saving throws are a d20 roll, unless you say otherwise. But if you just go off the base rules, it's it's my back. It's a d20 roll, okay? So the way an attack roll works is you'll roll the d20, and the modifiers that you add are your weapon attack modifier. So if it's a melee weapon without finesse, you'll use strength. And if it's a ranged weapon that's not a melee weapon first, you'll use dexterity, right? So if you throw a hatchet, it's strength. If you use a longbow, it's dexterity. If you use a longsword, it's strength, and if you use a rapier, it's dexterity or strength. Actually, you can use either one for rapier. People don't usually know that you can use either of those. So that's an attack roll, right? You roll the d20, you add your weapon ability modifier. Let's just go with great axe. So we add our strength, and then if we're proficient, which usually if you have a great axe you are, if we're proficient, we add our proficiency bonus. It's that simple, right? d20 plus strength plus proficiency. Now if that number equals or exceeds our foe's armor class, we will score a hit and roll for damage. And to the damage, we will add our weapon ability modifier again. So that's making an attack roll. Too easy. Making a spell attack. So when you roll for your spell attack, it's exactly the same as a weapon attack, okay? You'll use your spell casting ability modifier. Let's say we're a wizard and we're casting firebolt, so we'll use intelligence. We'll roll a d20, we'll add our intelligence and our proficiency to the attack roll. If it equals or exceeds our foe's armor class, we score a hit and we roll damage. In the case of spell attacks, however, they have no damage modifier. Like a weapon, you add your strength if you're using a great axe. With a spell, you don't add any damage modifier unless it says so specifically, like something like disintegrate has plus 40 force damage, right? If it doesn't have it within the spell, you're not going to add any kind of modifier to it for the damage roll. Now, a lot of people confuse the attack roll and the damage roll. The attack roll is to see if you hit, while the damage roll is to see how much damage you deal on a hit. Okay, it's too easy. They're separate. Damage is for once you've hit, and then attack roll is trying to hit. Okay, same thing with a spell attack. Right. So that's attack roll. That's casting a spell. Now a saving throw. There's a lot of effects that are going to require a saving throw. So if I'm a bard, level 1 bard, and I cast my Vicious Mockery, and my spell save is, let's just say, 12, for example. Okay, so that's going to require a wisdom saving throw from the enemy. Well, what's a wisdom saving throw? You roll a d20, and you add your wisdom, and you add their wisdom modifier, right? So d20 plus wisdom, that's their save. If their save equals or exceeds my spell save DC, they pass. Whatever happens on a pass happens. If they get a number that's less than my DC, they fail, and whatever happens when they fail happens, right? So we've covered initiative, attack rolls, saving throws, spell attacks, actions in combat, prepping for combat. We're doing really good. Now let's have an example round, okay? Because I see these videos all the time, and people don't include an example run of combat, and I'm just thinking, why would you do that, right? People are coming here to learn how to run combat. Let's have an example combat. So let's take Johnny Fighter and Goblin. Okay, first name Goblin, last name Goblin. It's a pretty common name among goblins. So they both roll initiative, and the Goblin, like we said, beats the Fighter in the initiative. Okay, so we roll our d20s. The Goblin gets a 17, and the Fighter gets a 15. Let's just say, for example, 17 higher than 15. So Goblin acts first in the first round. Goblin is going to charge up to the Fighter. He's going to make his attack roll using his action, and he's going to add his dexterity and his proficiency because he's wielding a scimitar, and that's a finesse weapon. So he gets a modified 15, which doesn't beat the Fighter's 16, right? He rolled a 10 on a d20, he added 3 and 2, which does not equal 16, so he misses. Well, now the Goblin is going to use his bonus action to disengage and flee from the Fighter without fearing an attack. The Fighter, however, still has, let's say he has Sentinel Feet, and he can get an attack of opportunity anyways, despite this disengage. So he uses his reaction to attack, and the Goblin uses his reaction to parry, right? So we've gone over attacks, we've gone over bonus actions, reactions, movement because the Goblin's running away, and then when the Goblin gets a safe distance away, he's going to pull out his horn and blow it, summoning his Goblin ally, so that's interaction as well. And maybe the Goblin's going to try and use his free action to, I shouldn't say free action, his free check, because there's already free action, free interaction. He uses his free check to try and intimidate the Fighter. He says something in Goblin like Bleeg Yark, and he fails because the Fighter doesn't understand Goblin. But so that's everything you can do in combat, and that's an example round, right? I should say that's an example turn, because now the Fighter is going to charge the Goblin. But the Fighter has already used his reaction, because it's one reaction per round, not per turn. However, he used his reaction before his first turn. So now that it comes to his turn, it resets. So he does still get his reaction, right? Because he used it before his turn, and his turn came about, and now he has another reaction, just like that. It refreshes on the turn, and they don't stack up. A lot of people think they stack up. I don't know why you would think that. You know, you can't just sit there for a while and gain a bunch of actions. No, it refreshes at the top of the round. Okay? So the Fighter charges. He makes his attack roll, and let's say he scores a 17. Right? He rolls a 13 on the die. He adds his proficiency and his strength. So it's 2 and 2. 2 proficiency, 2 strength, and he rolls a 17 and he hits. And then he rolls his damage. He rolls his d8. He gets a 5, and he adds his strength of 2. 7. Well, 7 damage takes out the Goblin, right? So he made his attack roll. He uses movement first. Actually, he uses free interaction first to draw his weapon. Then he makes his attack roll to see if he hits. He hits. Then he rolls his damage. He gets enough damage to slay the Goblin. And then he uses his free check to, intimidate. Intimidate the Goblin's allies. Like, I slew your ally and I'll kill you too. Something like that, right? So there's his free check. His reaction, maybe a Goblin shoots a bow at him, and he uses his reaction to parry, right? So that's everything. Bonus action. We still need a bonus action. He has an owl familiar, and he sends the owl to go scout for the goblins. So there's everything. That's an example round of combat. 2 turns, Goblin, Fighter. And you should be relatively squared away. Now, a pro tip for this video is pocket change, right? So pocket change is so simple, and it's one of the best rules that I personally have come up with. It just makes my life so much easier as a DM, and I primarily play as a DM. Basically what it is each enemy has pocket change on them when you slay them, right? So every time the players kill someone, they say, I loot the body, right? Well, this makes it so much easier. You just roll a d6. Roll 1d6 per monster. If it's a boss monster, or if they're more wealthy, you roll a bigger die. You roll more die, right? You just pick a number of die and a size of die for the monster to have. You roll that, they get that much gold. I don't use gold in my games as the primary currency because I prefer to say silver. I just like how it sounds more. But you can use gold in yours, just whatever your primary currency is, right? You roll it, boom. 1d6 for a Goblin, let's say they get 3. Goblin had $3 on them. Take it. You know, it's really handy, makes things so much faster. And down in the description below is links to my Discord. There's no one there right now because I just started this channel, but it's gonna be ballin' when it finally gets up. Goodbye, good luck, have fun in your games.